This episode and every episode of the Beer Guys Radio Show is brought to you by Monger Brewing. Visit Monger at their taproom in Marietta, Georgia, or online at ironmongerbrewing.com.
Open up a tab, grab a seat, and pour a pint. It's time for the Beer Guys Radio Show.
You want free beer? Go to the brewery.
Dedicated to the art, science, and enjoyment of craft beer.
Yo, what's wrong with the beer we got?
Now, here are your hosts, Tim Dennis and Brian Hewitt.
And welcome to the Beer Guys Radio Show. We're broadcasting from the Beer Guys Radio Studios in Marietta, Georgia. And this week we're going to be celebrating our freedoms, Brian, ahead of the 4th of July. And we thought the best brewery to do that with, 21st Amendment, is joining us. I'm Tim Dennis, and with me as always is my good friend and co-patriot, Brian Hewitt.
Thank you, Patriot. So joining us today, we have Shaun O'Sullivan, the brewmaster and co-founder of 21st Amendment Brewing. We're going to talk about Independence Day beers, insurrection beers, cool cans, and maybe we'll find out who El Sully is. Shaun, thanks for joining us.
You bet. It's great to be here today.
Absolutely. Shaun, 4th of July, is that big at 21st Amendment? Do you guys throw down over there?
Yeah, I mean, we have, a lot of the thematic theme through our entire package lineup is all of our beers is there's this sort of twist on Americana. And so because we've got the Statue of Liberty on there, we've got some presidents on there, it certainly plays well into what we do. So we have a lot of fun with it. We'll do events here for 4th of July. Also, I mean, in the beer industry, the 4th of July is the biggest selling day of the year, of the week of the year. So it's kind of where we hit the post in terms of sales. So it's not only important for us, but it's important for all craft brewers, all American craft brewers.
All American brewers celebrate. I saw actually just recently that the Brewers Association has declared July 3rd as National Independent Beer Run Day.
Oh, wow.
And they did a few little commercial spots that they said you'd be seeing around. I got the press release late, so I didn't get a chance to get much on it. But that's Beer Run Day for American beer.
Get out there, get your beer, and then celebrate the 4th. I love it.
So I think I know the answer to this already, but which is a bigger party day at 21st Amendment, the 4th of July or Repeal Day on the December 5th?
That's a great question. We probably lean into December 5th more. Repeal Day. That's when that horrible amendment was rescinded and they passed the 21st Amendment. And so we have a lot of fun with that. We started off as a pub in back in August of 2000 in San Francisco. And so what we would do on that day, and this is in San Francisco, downtown San Francisco, right near where the Giants play baseball. And so we would dress up in zoot suits and we would have signs. We still do this and then we'll have a band that will follow us around and we'll march. We have these signs that say we want beer, repeal Prohibition. And we walk into other bars in the neighborhood and just kind of sing and play this music. And then we have a big party back at the pub. So we do take December 5th very seriously.
Get out there. I've seen the signs from back before pre-prohibit or pre-repeal. We want beer.
Yep.
Marching down the street there. Got to have it in there. Good stuff. Well, Brian, we had a busy week here. Some brewery openings, stuff going on. Hop farm visits.
Yes.
All kinds of stuff. So we checked out the Lost Druid Brewery, a new brewery in Avondale Estates, Georgia. Not Avondale, Brian.
Avondale.
It's Avondale Estates, Georgia. Went over there, checked them out. And just like any good brewery opening, they had some equipment fought back a little bit.
Technical issues.
Yeah, glycol line went out on, which gave them some warm, foamy beer, but they jumped on and got that fixed. They're mild. They call it Druidic mild.
Yes.
And I really like that. Was my favorite one.
Keeper of the Lore.
Keeper of the Lore. Okay.
We also had a little preview of a dark beer, I think, with chipotle peppers in it or smoked or something. A little bit of combination. I don't know what the name of that was, but when that comes out, that's going to be pretty amazing, I think.
Well, we talked to the brewmaster there, Rob Hopek, and the sample that we got, he said he was really conservative with the chipotle because he didn't want to overdo it, but he said next time a little bit more. And I think just a little bit more would be good in that. A little more chipotle flavor.
It probably wouldn't hurt it, but it was really good as is. Yeah, and when I was at home not doing these things, I actually broke into my cellar and drank some of you remember the old beer camp beers from Sierra Nevada? Yeah, I broke out a couple of those, the darker ones that would hold up to the age, and they did a pretty good job. The Maynard's Odyssey and the Double Latte, that's Bell's and Ninkasi beers that collaborated with them on those. They held up pretty well, considering it's 4, maybe 5 years.
I was going to say, those have got a little age on them, though.
part of the reason I drank, and they
Get 'em
got to
down.
go. Yeah.
Well, that's Stephen Powell's told us. They get lonely. Don't leave them there.
That's
Drink
right.
your beers. So it's good to see you've been following his advice.
I have. I've taken it to heart.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, good stuff. And we had a good time. As I mentioned, we went out to Yorkville Hops and Produce. We grilled out there. We had what's called fireman's chicken. Had you heard of that before we had it?
No, I hadn't.
Shaun, have you ever heard of fireman's chicken?
No, I haven't, but I like the fact you use grilled out. That's a term that we use barbecue out here or grill.
Oh, yeah.
But I actually just used that with my son. You said we're going to grill out tomorrow night. And I was like, wow, that's something we don't usually say. And I felt good when I said it, though. But I've never had fireman's chicken.
You have to be careful in the South when you use the term barbecue. But, the Mike Barber, the proprietor there at Yorkville Hops, he built a big fire pit in the backyard. And fireman's chicken is a New York State thing. I think it was back like Depression or post-Depression era. People weren't eating chicken. So this guy at Cornell made this recipe for this fireman's chicken. And it became a staple at cookouts there in New York. So we had that. You did a little fish, and you caught a pretty nice fish there, Brian. That had to be 2-3 inches long.
It had to be at least half an ounce. Some sort of panfish, like a crappie or a bluegill or something like that. I think there was a little blue on it, so probably that.
But it was a good time.
Nearly as large as the lure, but I did it.
And checked out the hop plants coming in there. Some Zeus, some Chinook here in Georgia.
That's right.
Good
Hops
stuff.
growing here. Indeed. Tim, I think it's time for the beers of the week.
Crack open a cold one. It's the Truck and Tap Beer of the Week. Craft beer and food trucks in downtown Woodstock. Truckandtap.com.
Well, Brian, as always, we've got a nice list of beers to get into. From 21st Amendment, we are currently sipping a little toaster pastry, which is very tasty. We've also got their Hop Crisis, and we have a Wild Leap Truck Chaser Bomb Pop Double IPA.
That's right.
Say that again, Brian. So, and that one's, double IPA with the taste of the Bomb Pop Popsicle. So I'm curious to check that one out.
It's going to be exciting.
It is. I am excited. I'm quite excited. So, Brian, what is happening this week in the news?
What's in the news? The beer guys have the scoop.
Extra, extra, read all about it.
Time for headlines.
All right, so sad news. We've heard rumors about financial problems, but now it's official. Celis Brewery is being sold at auction on July 2nd. Celis is, of course, the brewery that was originally founded by Pierre Celis, who is called the father of wit beer, and he's the creator of Hoegaarden, which a lot of people around the world have consumed. So this is actually the third iteration of Celis Brewery, and Pierre's daughter, Christine Celis, has resurrected it and was running it. So according to Brewbound, the company was deeply in debt and overspent on their 50,000-barrel brew house in Northwest Austin. Reportedly, they were, quote, relying on financial models that require high double-digit year-over-year growth in order to service the debt. That model might have worked 6 or 7 years ago when that was really hot, but it's really tough to pull off these days. So what's even sadder is the brewery is going under the hammer just about a week before its second anniversary. So that's just, that's really too bad. Oddly enough, the last time I checked their social media, there was no acknowledgement of that happening. So I'm not sure what's going on there, but it's a sad story.
You know, a lot of the old school beer guys really had fond memories of that beer. And when it came back, we're excited about it. But I just think that's not a style or a brand that really got the modern craft drinker excited. And they had too small of an audience that was interested in that. So I thought it was an interesting move when they relaunched. It's disappointing. You like to see these classic brands, but I'm not surprised by it.
You kind of wonder, like, is a Belgian wit, how does that resonate? I think they're probably leaning into the, the heritage aspect of that brand. But I remember I saw Pierre Celis walking down the street in Denver one year at the GABF. And I was just like, holy crap, that's Pierre Celis right there. I mean, that guy's an icon in the industry. It's really it's a sad time to hear that story. So
yeah, it's really unfortunate. That's it. I do have some history with it. I met my wife and we drank a lot of Hoegaarden together. So there's a little sentimental thing. I really wish I could have tried the Celis resurrection of the beer. I never did. So let's move on to some good news about Belgian beer. The Trappist monks of St. Sixtus Abbey have started selling their beer online. Yes, that does mean Westy 12. The bad news is you will still have to visit the Abbey shop in person in order to pick up your purchase. So they say the reason for this change is to combat people selling their beer at a huge markup on the secondary market. So I didn't know it at the time, but when I was in Belgium 3 or 4 years ago, I actually bought Westy 12 in a convenience store.
Oh, wow.
I'm not kidding. I had no idea that they were not on board with that. That was the secondary market.
I can order Westy 12 from a shop online right now.
And I know that site, and I checked that after reading this article. Still there.
Okay. Well, you're listening to the Beer Guys Radio Show. We do need to take a break, but we'll be back very soon with more from 21st Amendment.
As a brewery owner or taproom manager, are you looking for ways to enhance your customer experience while maximizing your revenues? Craft Cellar is a mobile solution that helps your brewery drive sales and attract new customers through online pre-sales for beer releases, events, and memberships. Get details now at craftcellar.com. Mention Beer Guys Radio after sign up and extend your free trial to a full 30 days. Remember, craftcellar.com, craftcellr.com.
Craft beer forged with a reverence for tradition and new styles that start a revolution. Ironmonger Brewing. The brewers at Ironmonger Brewing pride themselves at being masters of barrel-aged, hoppy, and sour beers. They invite you to their tap room in Marietta, Georgia to taste and see. Also visit their barrel room for an intimate drinking experience with great live entertainment. Keep up to date on all things Ironmonger by liking them on Facebook. Ironmonger Brewing, establishing a new standard in craft beer.
Follow the Beer Guys on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Next Friday is Hawaiian Shirt Day. So, if you want to, go ahead and wear a Hawaiian shirt and jeans.
Now, back to the Beer Guys Radio Show.
Welcome back to the Beer Guys Radio Show. If you miss an episode, don't worry. All episodes are available as a podcast. Subscribe on your favorite podcasting app and never miss a show. Now more from Shaun O'Sullivan and 21st Amendment.
Shaun, once again, we do appreciate you joining us today. Looking forward to chatting with you. And start off, I got a question. When we were doing our homework to speak to you, I found out that you wore quite a few hats before you got into beer.
Translation, I didn't know what the heck I wanted to do.
I get that. Sure.
So, it kind of in my 20s, I sort of wandered in and out of like different career paths. I really want to start off as being a photographer. So as a photojournalist, going through college, went to UCLA out in Southern California, and then worked for a local weekly down in Los Angeles where I did a lot of political photography, as well as I was really into punk rock at the time. So I did a lot of, music, club photography as well. And then I think when I was in college, I also was an intern at CNN in DC. And then I got a job as a producer at their Los Angeles bureau. So I was doing that for a bit. It didn't really pay the bills, so I had to find a job that could pay the bills. So I ended up becoming a paralegal. I called my next door neighbor who I lived with in the dorms at UCLA, and his name was Dan Crilly. And I said, "What are you doing, man?" He goes like, "I'm working at this law firm in LA and I'm eating like lobster and steak." And I was like, "Oh, I want to," and making $18 an hour. And this is back in the 90s. And I was like, "Well, I want to eat lobster and steak." This is like, 20 something kid. And so, I got a job there. I didn't need any like legal background. And so worked there for a while and then actually kind of got at the entrepreneurial bug, so I actually created a business plan to open a frozen food cookie company, sort of explore those options. And then got into like a lot of craft brewers and all of us in beer, home brewing. And so did that down in Los Angeles, and then moved up to the Bay Area because there really wasn't a lot happening in craft beer at the time in the Southern California area. And I'd always loved this area. I'd always visited friends who were going to school up here when I was going to school in Southern California. So in Northern California, I moved up here and then quickly got into becoming a brewer, actually. And then it all began.
Made the jump. Now you mentioned home brewing, and one thing I found, I think it was an interview you did maybe a couple years ago with the guys over at All About Beer. You mentioned that they'd asked you, where the recipes came from, and you said a lot of them come from your kitchen. Do you still get a chance to do a lot of home brewing, and do you do experimental batches at home for 21st Amendment?
It's been a little bit of time since I have, but there are definitely like Toaster Pastry. That was a beer that we first put out in 2015 at our new production brewery here in San Leandro, and so that beer was definitely piloted on my little 5-gallon system, just trying to dial that in, and then what happens is then I'll take it to the pub brewery, which is a 12-barrel system at our pub in San Francisco, and then we'll brew it there before we bring it over here to the production side. So yeah, I do. I wish I could home brew more often. I love it. I love making an event of it. I invite friends over, and I'm cooking and home brewing at the same time. So it's like it's a little willy-nilly. But
maybe a little grilling out, right?
A little grilling out, exactly. Thank you, sir. And well played. For somebody who's I've been brewing for 24 years now, Jesus. And so to get back to home brewing when I can, even when somebody else is doing it, I love it. It's just like, it's just it's a moment. It's in all of our DNA as brewers. So I don't know anybody who doesn't respond to it when they see it going on.
That's it. That was the thing I thought when I read that, is most of the brewers I talk to now talk about home brewing, and there's kind of a disappointed shrug or a little bit of a sigh or a groan. They're like, I just don't have time for that anymore.
Yeah.
Doing the beer I do here, and I've got other things to do when I'm not brewing. So
I know that feeling.
Yeah. That's
we used to homebrew. Yeah.
That's sad saying that.
Yeah,
so,
we should start a club. The used to homebrew.
The used to homebrew club.
We'll just talk about recipes.
Yeah.
We'll never actually make them.
Do you remember that time?
Oh yeah, that was a good time.
Oh yeah.
I was thinking, so you mentioned Toaster Pastry. We've been drinking it. I think there's an interesting story behind that. You want to tell us a little bit about Toaster Pastry? Yeah,
so the production brewery we have here in San Leandro is in an old Kellogg's factory. So Kellogg's, of course, makes cereals that are all our favorite cereals we grew up with as kids, or maybe we eat them as adults on occasion. And so they also make Pop-Tarts. And so this was a huge facility. They had your giant campus, and they left here in 1995. So in order to pay an homage to it, we decided to brew this beer called Toaster Pastry, and it's not a pastry beer like you have today. It's a Imperial Red, essentially a double red, and it was a lot of fun. It was also interesting because it won a couple of medals like right out of the gate at like the GABF and World Beer Cup, and so we all got. And we also put it in a 19.2 stovetop because we put all our beer in cans. So
I remember that.
Yeah.
Yes.
So this beer was really designed to kind of celebrate, and we couldn't call it Pop-Tarts because even though this was an old Kellogg's plant, they'd come after us with guns blazing. So we had to call it Toaster Pastry.
You need a spring-loaded box that pops up a can when you're ready. You just push a button on the side and it pops it up like a toaster.
I think either Pepsi or Coca-Cola tried pop-up cans and it made people angry. Do you remember that? Shaun, do you remember that competition?
No, I don't remember that.
So it was either Pepsi or Coke had a competition where they gave away like $1 to $5, and they were special cans. When you pop the top on the can, it was actually motorized and would raise the money up out of there and play a little tune. You're a winner. The problem is they had guys like on construction sites in 100-degree temperatures that would crack one and win $1 and then not have a drink. And they're like, what the? So yeah, it really interesting concept, but didn't go over as well.
Well, I'm talking about popping the entire can out of the box, not too high.
Oh, just right out of the box. Just shoot it right out of there.
Yeah, like it's done. So, you push down on the lever on the side and it pops up, and boom, there's your beer. It's ready.
For what it's worth, I think this beer would actually pair pretty well with a toaster pastry.
I think it would.
Have you ever tried that, Shaun?
Yeah, I mean the whole design, the beer, the idea behind the recipe behind that beer was that the malts, and we're using some really flavorful malts in that beer, like there's a darker medium crystal 77, there's Weyermann Munich 2, there's Chateau Biscuit, and then some dark Weyermann Carafa, is to sort of create like a crust-like experience with the malt, and then with the hops, layering in the hops as well, sort of adding sort of this jammy quality with Simcoe, Amarillo, and Cascade and Centennial, and the way those play in there, and also Calypso. It's had this kind of I think I like to call it raspberry, kind of a raspberry fruity note to it.
I can see that.
Yeah, and it was exciting. It was exciting when we won those medals because you build a new brewery, and then you win something, and you're like, hey, all right, maybe. So then after that, we put it in 6-packs, like almost immediately, and from the 19.2.
Probably a good call.
It was. The 19.2 was an interesting package because there weren't a lot of 19.2 packages out there, and so I think the consumer had a challenge with that initially. And so I think that was thinking back on the plan to roll it to 6 12-ounce cans was sort of a way to say, let's see how this works too.
You were actually ahead of the curve with that, as you were with cans too. So I wanted to ask really quick. You mentioned this won some awards. Do you know how many awards you've collected over the years, and which of your beers has won the most? Would you say?
Oh man, I would say that there hasn't been one particular beer. It seems like I would say it was probably El Sully and also Toaster Pastry. I mean, that have come in that, as far as our production beers go, have won multiple awards. But I think we've won probably close to 20 in between the GABF and World Beer Cup. And then there's other events, but the ones we really pay attention to are those two. So
I saw a list of GABF and World Beer Cup, and it was a pretty nice list there.
Yeah.
So, you're listening to the Beer Guys Radio Show. We do need to take another break, but we'll be back very soon with more from Shaun O'Sullivan at 21st Amendment. Brian and Tim, the Beer Guys. If you're like us, no lunch or dinner is complete without a pint or two of craft beer.
Which is why Truck and Tap in downtown Woodstock, Alpharetta, and Duluth are always on our list. Tim, why do they call it Truck and Tap?
Well, the tap part is easy, Brian. They've got 18 of them.
As for the truck part, that's where it gets interesting. Truck and Tap features your favorite Atlanta area food trucks, so you're getting a different menu every day.
Truck and Tap in downtown Woodstock, Alpharetta, and Duluth.
Truckandtap.com. Let them know that the Beer Guys sent you.
Have you ever thought about owning your own brewery but don't know what it takes to get one built? We're Storytime Construction, and we build breweries. We're Georgia's most experienced and hands-on contractors when it comes to building new breweries and tap rooms, or expanding existing breweries. We offer full build-outs, remodeling, and additions, as well as consulting and construction management. Give us a call at 770-733-4343. Storytime Construction. We build breweries.
Follow the Beer Guys on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Cannonball coming.
Now, back to the Beer Guys Radio Show.
Welcome back to the Beer Guys Radio Show. I want to give a quick shout out to one of our great radio affiliates, WSLA 1560 AM in Slidell, Louisiana. Catch Beer Guys Radio on WSLA every Saturday at 8 a.m. Central. Now let's get back to our talk with Shaun O'Sullivan from 21st Amendment.
Well, Shaun, I cut Brian off a little bit before the break. He had mentioned that you were 21st Amendment was an early adopter of canning beers. We didn't have quite enough time then to go into it, but that's an interesting topic. You kind of got into that at a time when a lot of craft beer drinkers still shunned, canned beers. So what made you decide to get into that early?
Yeah, that was it was an interesting time because we, there was probably at the time, I want to say like maybe just a handful of craft breweries across the country were getting into cans, putting their beer in cans. And, now it's, thousands. And so what happened was back in 2005, I took a little trip out to Oscar Blues in Lyons, Colorado, and saw what they were doing out there. And they were putting their Dale's Pale Ale in a 12-ounce can. And I was like, kind of like, like a light went off in me, or I was struck by lightning. And so I thought, this is amazing. This is like, such a unique beer. You've never had craft beer, a beer with flavor like that in a can before. So I went back to San Francisco, and Nico and I thought of, were thinking about ways to expand the business. We were a little gun shy of opening another little brew pub because it was really hard to do the first time, very hard, money. And so I went back and I said, hey, I got a great idea. Let's take our two most popular beers, our watermelon wheat, which is what it was called at the time, and our IPA, and let's put them in cans and sell them. And he thought it was the dumbest idea in the world. And so, and then we both looked, and he looked into all the, the great reasons that we know today of how cans are great. We know is the fact it's portability, it's better for the beer because no light can penetrate the can, recyclability, all those things. And so we thought, let's do it. And so we bought a little 2-head can filler from a company called Cast Brewing Systems in Calgary, Canada, because there wasn't a lot of small systems available for craft brewers at the time. That's why people weren't putting their beer in cans. And the other kind of hiccup to getting into cans was that when you buy cans from the big can manufacturers, you have to buy millions of them. And so when you have a little 2-head filler, you're only doing 17 cases an hour. It takes a long time to, go through those cans. Yeah. So, but like you said, I mean, there weren't a lot of people doing it at the time, and so we ended up talking more about the can than the beer inside, which was actually interesting because it was a unique selling, opportunity where you could kind of tell the story, what was, behind what the whole idea of the can was. And for me personally, it was great because I was a kid, living in Southern California who used to collect beer cans. And so when my parents promptly heard that we were putting our beer in cans, they took my entire beer can collection that was sitting in their attic in Southern California and shipped it up to me in Northern California.
There you go.
And so, so, getting cans was definitely, that's all we put our beer in. We call cans little kegs, and we also put it in kegs as well. So
now you did a beer. I'm trying to remember, Brian. I think you may have made a note. Was it Lower to Boom?
Yes.
Was that, and didn't you have that? Was that like an 8-ounce can?
Like a little thin yellow can?
Yeah.
Might have been 10 ounces.
Yeah, it was 8.4 ounces. This is 11.5% alcohol barley wine.
I did too.
And it was, it was sort of it went back to like the way, if you remember barley wines, like let's say if we're out here in the West Coast from Sierra Nevada, they're Bigfoot, and then also Anchor, with Old Foghorn. I mean, they used to have small bottles. This was a beer that was meant to be just sort of enjoyed. It wasn't meant to be sort of consumed in a way that you'd have, let's say another, lower alcohol beer, a pale ale or an Anchor Steam or something.
I've been doing it wrong, Tim.
Yes, or oh so right,
or very right.
And so we decided we had access to these slim cans, and we thought we would put it in those little cans. It was called Lower to Boom because the alleyway that runs up against the brewery, which is on 2nd Street, then there's an alleyway called De Boom. So the idea was, who was named for Cornelius de Boom, who was the Belgian consulate back in 1849 in San Francisco. It wasn't only there for a couple of years. That's why he only got an alley named after him. And so we called it Lower to Boom, like you're lowering the boom. So
will we see that beer again? Because I did like that a great deal.
I love that beer. Thank you for saying that. I mean, again, never say never in the beer industry, but it's not currently out there. But a couple of years ago, I think a year actually, this past January, it won I think a silver medal at the Great Alaska Beer and Barley Wine Festival. You're kind of going against some heavy hitters up there, and so I remember when they announced actually that day when we were pouring beer, and they started to announce the winners because they were like, and this is in the middle of winter in Alaska, in Anchorage, and they were announcing the winners, and I turned to my friend and I said, we never win this thing. And then they said, and a dark horse has won, and it was Lower to Boom. And so I couldn't believe it. So I was like pleasantly surprised.
I think you should take it to the next level next time you make that one and put it in like maybe 4, maybe even 2-ounce cans.
2 ounce.
And do like a taster flight case. Yeah.
Tim, I thought you were going to go the other direction. I thought you were going to be like, like a 32-ounce crowler can.
The crowler can. No. I'm going crowler. I like to taste a bunch of beers, man. So I'm looking for those 2-ounce cans.
There's actually more tin than beer.
Right.
Exactly. I'm writing that one down.
Yeah, for sure.
We're looking forward to it because you're an early adopter with the cans. So you always had these really intriguing styles in your cans, really great Americana designs. Was that part of what it took to talk people into drinking craft beer out of a can? Was that the idea behind it? It's like, if we're going to get them to drink out of a can, we got to give them a really cool looking can.
Well,
part of that?
Yeah, I think that played into it. I mean, initially when we first started putting our beer in cans and like little tabletop filler, it was just IPA and watermelon wheat. And then when we decided to start distributing the beer outside of the little, pub there across the country, and we thought it would be fun to change the names and also have some fun with the artwork. And so do this twist on Americana, like this classic art, like, Mount Rushmore, the Statue of Liberty. And so, you still have that iconic imagery, but we actually use an artist we've been using for some time by the name of Joe Wilson. It's interesting. Joe is actually an artist, a graphic artist in London. He's actually English, and so I think it's kind of a unique take on like a guy from England on what we have here in America. So.
It's distinctive. It's definitely distinctive.
If he comes to the brewery, does someone go outside and yell, "The British are coming! The British are coming!"
Maybe they do, but it's so funny because I met him for the first time a couple years ago, and he looks exactly like Johnny Depp. It's weird. You look at him, and you're like, it's just startling. So maybe they'll just say, "Johnny's coming! Johnny's coming!
Johnny's coming!" Okay. Now we talked about your cans have a cool Americana on them, and as we mentioned, 4th of July is coming up. Just around the corner, we're going to be celebrating fireworks, barbecues, cooking out, grilling out, drinking beer. If you can't choose Hell or High Watermelon, what beer from 21st Amendment most says 4th of July?
Well, for me, it would be probably our newest creation, which is called Sparkale. And the imagery on the package is of a hand holding up a sparkler. And this is kind of the latest innovation that we've had. And you've kind of seen a few of these sparkling rosé ales out there. And so ours is, it's a hybrid between a cider and a beer. And then we sweeten it with peach, cranberry, and cherry juice. The peach gives you sweetness, the cranberry gives you a tartness, and then the cherry gives you a little bit of color and a light herbal note. And then it's also out here in San Leandro in Northern California here. Our whole city, before it became warehouses, was cherry orchards. So that's an homage to that as well. But it's super refreshing. It's like you can't tell any one of those flavors specifically, but they all kind of come together for this sort of sparkling rosé ale experience. So I love it. It's always fun when new stuff comes out of your brewery, and I think the sparkler idea on it would really speaks well to celebrating the 4th of July.
That sounds like it nails it. Absolutely. Well, you're listening to the Beer Guys Radio Show. We do need to take one more break, and we'll be back to talk more with 21st Amendment. Is your brewery or restaurant flooring all jacked up? Your foundation needs to be protected from heat, chemicals, and other contaminants. At the same time, you want to make sure it's slip resistant and you can clean up your messes with soap and water. You know who to call? ResTech. We've been manufacturing poured-in-place flooring since 2002, and we've got solutions to fit any facility's needs. Go on and visit our website at restech.net. That's res-tek.net. Drop us a line and we will come to you for a free evaluation.
Oh, yeah. We are Reformation Brewery, celebrating the reformer in you. Locally crafted within the renowned Etowah watershed of Woodstock, Georgia, Reformation creates yeast-forward brews full of aroma and flavor crafted to last. Come see us in beautiful Woodstock, Georgia, for a tour and tasting of unique brews that you can't find anywhere else. Reformation Brewery, set beer free. ReformationBrewery.com.
Follow the Beer Guys on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Well, I'm sure I'd feel much worse if I weren't under such heavy sedation.
Now, back to the Beer Guys Radio Show.
Welcome back to the Beer Guys Radio Show. If you enjoy the show, please consider supporting us on Patreon. Just go to patreon.com/beerguys. Patrons can get some cool perks like Beer Guys swag, commercial-free episodes, and even bonus episodes that aren't available anywhere else. Now more from Shaun O'Sullivan and 21st Amendment Brewery.
So, Shaun, we just finished up drinking a couple cans here of your Hop Crisis Imperial IPA, and it's got some fun quotes all around it. Can you tell us about the inspiration for Hop Crisis?
Well, Hop Crisis, it actually started off as a triple IPA as a pub brew back in the early 2000s. Is that how you say that?
That sounds right. Yeah.
When there was a hop crisis. I don't know if you remember that. But yeah, there was like all of a sudden it was like there's no hops. And all the hops, you were buying like Centennial hops at $28 a pound, and there was a hop crisis. There was a couple things. There was some big storm, I think, in Australia, and there was a drought up in Yakima, and the Chinese market, I think, was buying up hops. There was some like perfect storm of events. Anyway, so we thought it would be fun to kind of ignore the fact that there was, this going on here. And we decided that we brew a beer called Hop Crisis at our pub in San Francisco and put in like an absurd amount of hops in there. So it was like Hop Crisis with a question mark off it. Like, whatever, let's just do this. And so pretty brazen.
What
exactly.
Hop Crisis?
Crisis? What Hop Crisis? Yeah. So it was pretty brazen of us. So we decided that we liked the name, and we decided that we would, make it a double IPA and then release it as part of our Insurrection series. So this is a series that we do about 3 times a year. And these are like small little limited runs. And usually these beers have, unique different flavors that sort of, jump off from like where our current core lineup is. And so, the packaging, the imagery on the packages that the Insurrection series in general is where Nico Fraichen, my business partner and the other founder, where we're kind of time trippers and we're tripping through time. And here we are we're trying to get the hops out of Alcatraz because all the hops are being, in the story are being hoarded or stored in Alcatraz. And so we scheme a way to sort of get the hops out. And so,
that was the Hop Syndicate,
yes, exactly.
hoarding hops.
Yeah, so they're hoarding the hops, and so we were out there trying to break them out, and we're like, skating away, we're like surfing away on like ironing boards, and it's just yeah. But that beer is a lot of fun to make. I mean, that beer changes every time we make it. We've made it a few times now, and so it's kind of looking at what kind of hops we have that are available for us, and so and have an opportunity to just brew a small amount, and then. It used to come out in a 4-pack, like our old Insurrection series, and now it's in a 6-pack.
So you've been doing the Insurrection series for, I guess this is 10 years at this point?
Yep.
And and what's that about? And you've got another one coming this year too, right?
Yeah, we have. It's just an opportunity for us to sort of create, like I said, unique beers and also to collaborate. So we did an Oyster Stout with Hog Island Oyster Company out here, which is a company in the just north of us in San Francisco. And we used to just make this beer called Oyster Point Oyster Stout at the pub, and we were using their oysters. And so we eventually just started, it was an excuse to eat oysters, basically. We'd reserve the shell and the brine, and we would brew a stout with it the next day. And the idea behind it is that, the salinity and the brine is an ingredient that you use in beer, and it also helps round out the flavors and sort of the darker malts. And then the calcium maybe precipitates from the shell, precipitates into the beer as well. So I approached them and said, "Hey, why don't we make this beer?" And so we came up with Marooned on Hog Island, which was one of the Insurrection beers, and it was an oyster stout, and pretty phenomenal beer. I mean, when we made it for what we did on the production side, we actually used the whole oyster. So we put whole oysters in our hop dosers, and we would recirculate hot stout wort through it, and at the end of it you'd pull out these baskets of these cooked oysters, and you'd eat them. It was amazing. It was so I was like,
were they good? I'd wondered if anybody ate the oysters out of there.
It's delicious.
Oh,
it's really good.
Stout
yeah.
Okay. I wasn't sure because we actually read the history of the oyster stouts not too long. We did Stout Show. Stouts are for summer, and we talked about the oyster stout and how they started, just with the shells for the calcium, and at some point it went over to
throw the whole thing in there. Yeah. So,
why not? Right?
And we've also done it with other breweries, and that's the great thing about brewing is that you get to partner up with your friends and do collaborations, and essentially an excuse to hang out together. So, yeah.
Good times, man. Good times.
So I have to ask this question before we run out of time. Who is El Sully?
So El Sully, yeah. So it's interesting because I don't know if I'm supposed to talk about this, but I guess we're all friends now, right? So yeah,
we are friends.
We go
Nobody's
way back.
Listening, right?
Yes.
This isn't a radio show, right?
No. Nobody.
Okay. All right, so we're not on the air right now. Okay. So El Sully was a the idea behind the beer is it's a Mexican lager, Mexican style lager. And it was a beer originally, again, brewed at the pub. And it sort of stemmed from my experience down in Southern California where I surfed and lived near the beach and drank a lot of Tecate. And we decided that we wanted to make this beer and package it. And I decided to call it El Sully, which is, technically it's my name, but I think El Sully is all of us in a lot of ways. It's all of us who want to drink a beer and enjoy a beer that's not produced by a major, larger conglomerate brewery, like one of the larger Mexican lagers. So we're all El Sully. We kind of celebrate this idea of drinking craft beer. We like to think that this beer, which is like I said, a classic Mexican style lager, is what Modelo would dreams of when it goes to bed at night. So it's a little play on the if you read the back of the can on the most important man in the world or most interesting man in the world, and so and it's also funny because it's a Mexican lager brewed by an Irish brewer. So and on top of that, it's won a couple of GABF medals. It won a gold a couple of years ago, and last year it won a bronze. So I love that beer. I mean, that beer light beers are hard to make because they show all their flaws very easily. If there's something that goes sideways when you're brewing or fermenting or packaging, whatever, it's going to really show itself that way or show the problems of it. So I like it because it's a challenge to make, but it's easy to drink. So
you can use the slogan "Stay parched, my friends."
Stay parched, exactly.
Something along those lines.
Or potentially Yo Soy El Sully.
There you go.
There you go. There's so much opportunity.
You need a cape for that, probably, but yes. Yeah. Go with that.
Now speaking of El Sully, we saw an image of a recipe card for a Michelada.
Yes.
With using El Sully for beer cocktail, and I'm a fan. We did an event here with Terrapin. They do what they call their wake and bake off each year, where they cook with their stout, and then they do a brunch. And so as part of the brunch, they had a Michelada bar there. And I may have had a few. Hush, Brian, you stay out of this. But I really enjoy those. But that's talking of beer cocktails. It seems there's a pretty big trend in your fan base making beer cocktails with your beers. So what is your personal favorite beer cocktail?
I mean, the Michelada is probably my favorite. I mean, I think that's especially right now as it's warming up. I think that's probably my go-to, and it's also it has El Sully in it. So we do cocktails with Sparkale as well. We're just sort of developing that right now. I don't have that card in front of me, but I can send you it. And that's part of the fun. I mean, I think right now with so many unique, interesting beers that are out there and new styles that are coming online, people are really having a lot of fun with blending and doing different things with beer and cocktails. And so,
and one of the things that's keeping you busy right now, just to switch gears real quick, but you spend a lot of time in Texas. What's that about?
Yeah, Texas is our latest market. We just opened, and it's like its own country in a lot of ways because it's so vast. Yeah, we sent three teams out there. I chose Austin. I like music, and I like the scene there, and so I just got back a few days ago, and it was 100 degrees and 100% humidity. And but our distributor out there, Benny Keith, is killing it. They're doing a great job. And I did. When you do these market launches, it's a lot of you're doing a lot of telling stories and holding babies, and you're talking about the beer and the brand, and it's great when you do this because you get to see what is happening with craft beer all over the country.
That's very cool. So Shaun, we're running out of time here, but if people want to keep up with what's happening at 21st Amendment Brewing, where should they go? What should they do?
We're on all the social sites, and it's all 21st Amendment. All just out at 21st Amendment on Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook, and our website is 21st-amendment.com, and that'll take us right to our page. And also, if you're out here visiting the Bay Area, and we've got our brew pub in San Francisco, just down on 2nd Street, right near where the baseball park is. And then we also have our production brewery out here in San Leandro.
Awesome. Sounds like a good trip. Thank you much, Shaun. That about wraps it up for this episode of the Beer Guys Radio Show. Hope everyone has a happy 4th of July filled with good craft beer. Coming up next week, we are going to be talking with Lone Rider Brewing. For more craft beer info, follow us online. We are Beer Guys Radio on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thanks again for tuning in. Have a great week, and don't forget to drink local. Cheers.
The Beer Guys Radio Show on the Beer Guys Radio Network. BeerGuysRadio.com.